how much money do you actually have to be offering to TikTok?
Well, it's too early to know how much the TikTok is going to be sold for, or if it's going to be sold. We happen to believe it will be sold, and we're betting on that. We don't have the information yet, though, on what exactly they're selling, or a peek at the financial statements. So we can't really tell what the price will be. But one thing that's important, Caroline, is we're not interested in the algorithm. So we're interested in actually an alternative web where people own and control their data, own and control their identity. So we're not interested in ByteDance's algorithm, which I think makes our bid particularly unique.
Frank, we will discuss later on, I think, the technology plan. That's important, given that the algorithm is essentially put on an export ban list by China. But I'd be grateful in the first instance just to go through some of the mechanics here, if that's okay. For example, have you spoken to TikTok or ByteDance? Have you spoken to the US government about this bid?
Yeah, we have not spoken to ByteDance or TikTok. We have spoken to a number of other actors in this and have been encouraged to move forward with this approach. Remember, this is putting forward an alternative vision for how the internet operates. You know, right now, whether it's ByteDance, whether it's TikTok rather, or our own U.S. platforms, our information, our data, our personhood actually is scraped from us, aggregated by these big platforms, and they apply algorithms to it. I think it's time, past time really, that we have an alternative version of the internet where we each own and control our identity, own and control our data, and we have all the benefits of the internet and the wonderful technology that's there connecting all of us, but we're in charge of us. So agency is returned to individuals. That's the technology we've been building over the last almost 5 years. I greenlit this project in December of 2019. So the tech works. We actually have a proof of concept. There's almost 1 million users now on this new protocol. So now it's time to scale it up and give people a real choice.
Frank, you mentioned other actors. I'm conscious that Sequoia and General Atlantic, for example, are US-based firms that sit on the cap table of ByteDance. Do you have their support in your bid?
It's too early, Ed, for me to make these statements. We've retained Guggenheim Securities as our advisor, along with Kirkland & Ellis as an advisor, to put together all the pieces of this bid. But let's be realistic. This is early in a process. It's still very noisy. We don't know exactly what ByteDance will be selling. They've filed a lawsuit recently, so they're fighting this. But I am confident that at the end of the day, they'll either have to sell or shut it down. And we don't want to see TikTok shut down. There's 170 million users enjoying TikTok. We want to see them continue to enjoy it. But again, we're not interested in the algorithm, which I think makes our bid very, very unique. And we can migrate these users over to a new version of the internet where the 170 million users actually participate in the value they create and are in charge of their data. Imagine a version of TikTok where the version is clicking on the terms of use of each of the 170 million users, rather than the 170 million users clicking on the terms of use of one platform. I don't think this data should be in the control of any one person, one company, or Chinese Communist Party. I think it's important that we shift our mindset now and shift the paradigm from the internet we've been living with, which is doing real harms, and it's undermining democracy, it's ripping society apart, and of course we're hearing more and more about the harms to children. Let's build a better version.
We are with Frank McCourt, of course, a Project Liberty founder, McCourt Global Executive Chairman, and across radio and TV, we're discussing your potential bid for TikTok, if indeed TikTok is to be sold, and that is a big if. But all of this sounds philanthropic. Do you not want any money back if you're going to be raising billions, putting billions of your own potentially on the line here?
Yeah, of course. I think it's interesting that it sounds philanthropic to you, because I do think it does have the potential of being one of the biggest impact projects of our lifetime. But this has to have commercial components to it, to be realistic. I mean, this can't be some alternative internet that is, you know, better architected and healthier for people, but no one uses.
So will there be advertising? How will you make money back? Is it subscription-based?
Yeah, all of the above. Let's think of it this way. Once you unleash the power and the innovation and the invention of a data-sharing economy, we're going to see ideas and models that far exceed what we have today. Right now, all of this is tied up in just a few companies, just a few platforms. Let's unleash the innovation of everyone and unleash and have the value sharing proposition be a bit different. So of course there'll be commercial uses limited only by our imagination, and maybe there'll be some advertising models, maybe there'll be some subscription models, but it has to be highly commercial.
Frank, sorry to interrupt you. There's a recurring question. I think Caroline would back me up that I've been very consistent in asking it, which is there are 170 million US users of TikTok, and most of them quite like using it as it is. Is there anything you can tell me about the product plan or your engagement with the existing user base that would convince that 170 million that they'll want to continue using it whatever happens?
Yeah, of course. This is the key to the transaction, is for them to be excited about migrating to this new model of the internet, let's call it, where they own and control their data and where they participate in the value. So the user experience has to be every bit as easy, polished, and fun as it is now. But wouldn't users be excited about actually being in charge and actually participating in the value? And so, yeah, this has to be seamless in terms of the user experience, but the underlying technology will be far, far better. The design of the technology, putting them in charge of themselves. So, of course, it needs to be done in a way, Ed, where the users are as excited or more excited about the new version. But remember, right now, there's a risk that it will be shut down. So we don't want to see it shut down. We want to see the 170 million users continue to be on a platform that our government is comfortable with, and that ByteDance, quite frankly, is comfortable in selling it.
Frank, we use words like consortium or even like coalition. There are a number of people who have raised their hand about doing something with TikTok's US assets. Steve Mnuchin, former Treasury Secretary, and Eric Schmidt, one of the Google founders, kind of top of mind. Have you spoken to them and proposed, for example, that you all just get together, bring your intellectual capital together in one bid?
No, I have not. And I do want to distinguish our bid from what at least I understand their bids to be about. We don't need Saudi money to do this bid, right? We're not talking about the same type of architecture where we just replace Chinese ownership with another ownership, and then we have continue to have a centralized, autocratic, surveillance-based technology where users' data is scraped and aggregated and so forth. This is not, our version is not a top-down approach. Our version is empower the users, empower people, and make this a people's bid. Make this something where individuals have agency and choice and power returned to them. The harms that we're seeing with the internet, and this is not limited to TikTok, right? Our own platforms are built with the same model of scraping data and exploiting it. Isn't it time we have a better model? And I see this opportunity as it's a fantastic opportunity to take proven technology and scale it and give people a choice, an alternative.
And Frank, you've got people who are at the forefront of that argument about the harms of social media. Jonathan Hyde being one of them with the anxious generation. It's all I see on social media at the moment. David Clark's, Tim Berners-Lee, who helped create the World Wide Web. However, this sounds like you need crowdfunding, ultimately. If you don't need Saudi money, what money will you need when you get a price point?
I think there'll be a combination of private capital, what I'll call public capital, and people's capital. So
it will be crowdfunded?
Crowdfunding has an implication, right? I don't think we're necessarily raising money on the internet. So that's not what we're talking about. But look, we've brought in Guggenheim Securities to help organize how we raise money. This should be, the investors here should be should really reflect the broad coalition we're trying to create here about reclaiming the internet, right? And using this as an opportunity to do that. So I would imagine, in addition to private capital, there would be pension funds, endowments, foundations, philanthropies that are interested in a return, but not only a return on their capital. They have a longer term horizon, and they would like to see the internet re-architected So it's better for all of us, and it supports democracy, right? It supports civil society. It protects young children. And the book I wrote recently called Our Biggest Fight gets into some detail on the harms that the current version of the internet are doing to all of us. It's not limited to children, but especially children. And I think our number one obligation is to protect kids.